Today, I'm joined by Josh Kassing, Vice President of Design Development for Chicago-based design firm Cook Associates. We'll be discussing one of the firm's recent reports about buyer demographics, specifically all about millennials. So welcome, Josh. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You bet.
Of course. So Josh, let's just jump in. And to start, can you please tell me a little bit more about Cook Associates and your series of white papers?
Sure, absolutely. So we've been around for about 35 years. This is our 35-year anniversary, actually, so very exciting. We've been through a lot of cycles and a lot of markets over the years, and we've worked for a few different types of markets and have really built a business around working exclusively for owners and developers of real estate. So that's entirely what we focus on. A few different market segments, anything from single family to multifamily, senior housing, student housing, hospitality, and a really nice sort of cross-pollination happens when you're working in all of those markets because they do start to inform each other. So we're a full service interior architecture firm, work nationally. We've completed work in over 35 states and are currently doing work in about 14 states. So we understand that every market operates a little bit differently, and we custom curate one-of-a-kind design approaches that respond to every market and then the target demographics within those markets. So we have an approach. It's based in the 7 fundamentals. And these 7 fundamentals are what make up the art of space. The Art of Space is a book that Mary Cook, our founder and president, wrote about 10 years ago now. And it basically articulates how to guarantee successful interior design. And there's really 7 elements that when you get those things right, everything seems to hum and sort of work in harmony. And that's how you get good interior design. And so we take those and we apply to each of our projects. Sort of in response to that, we created this series of white papers that we're really excited about. It's a 2-part series, the first of which we're in right now. So we have released 2 white papers so far. We're working actively on the 3rd. And basically what we're doing is following the 7 fundamentals. So each white paper responds to one of the different 7 fundamentals. And then we talk about a relevant topic in today's market, which given the current climate of everything is moving very quickly. So it's sort of it'll be fun to go back and look at in a couple of years just to see how quickly things were changing and how we as designers are responding to everything going on using the 7 fundamentals as our sort of guiding light. So the first white paper that we're talking about today is really based on fundamental number 1, which is objective. Who are we designing for? Where do they live? And what does it mean to how they live? Which is all about demographics and psychographics.
So let's discuss millennials, right? And, millennials make up the largest portion of our population right now and 40% of today's buyers. So Cook Associates' recent report argues that psychographics, and you had kind of mentioned this in your background, are more telling than demographics. So can you kind of elaborate on this distinction for us?
Absolutely. So demographics are a lot of very tangible data, right? It's the what when you're responding to who somebody is. So it's listing things like age, ethnicity, background, income, things that are very measurable and very tangible. What psychographics is trying to do is add in or layer in the why behind those things. Why are those numbers being driven the way they are? And how does it impact the way somebody might make decisions? When we take psychographic elements or information, it's really getting into the analysis of it, which helps us understand what we can do as designers to help respond to that information.
So millennials, to start, let's do who are millennials? What is that kind of who part of this demographic?
For sure, absolutely. Well, millennials are a really interesting demographic. One, because I'm one of them, and I don't know. I mean, millennials are very interesting because they're 25 to 40 years old right now, right? So they're in it's just 15 years in that age bracket. There's some pretty significant variables. Some people are really focused on launching their careers, establishing what they want to do with their lives, and others are, in that same bracket on their 3rd or 4th child. And so it's quite a range of life moments, moments in their life that makes for some interesting psychographic information. So, millennials right now are about 80 million strong. So there's a lot of millennials, and again, they're between 25 and 40 years old. They're internet natives. So they're the first generation that was really brought up using the internet, which means they more than any other generation have a very intimate relationship to what the internet can do for them. how they can find, gather, and analyze information. It makes them sort of natural skeptics in a way, right? When we see something as millennials on the internet, we immediately verify where that information came from, because we came up in a generation where when you saw something on the internet, people didn't even know what the internet was for a while. So we're inherently thrown so much information from using the internet for all of our communication. We're a little bit more particular about where and how we get our information, but also use the internet for everything we do. It is the ultimate glue and connective sort of tissue between all of our different elements, whether that's work, life, fun, play, relationships. The internet is really the basis. And again, we're the first ones going through that. So there's been some interesting, design trends surrounding that too. Very diverse, coming from a lot of different backgrounds and open to diversity in a lot of ways. One of the generations that I think looks at diversity in a very different light from other generations that is pretty special. Debt burdened, right, for a lot of reasons. A major one being student loan debt, right, which impacts all of our decisions right out of college. Very confident, very ambitious, very independent. They like what they like, and they're not afraid to say it publicly, especially coming back to that integration of technology, right? That they're very public. They like their likes. They like the attention from being on social that drives, and reaffirms their positions on things. So that, that creates some interesting dynamics there. And they love a great deal. They love feeling like what they're paying for is worth it, is valid, is a bang for their buck, makes sense. Now they'll put money into things they believe will, either increase their personal brand or they'll see a return on. They're not afraid to spend the money. They just want to be sure it's a good deal. They want to be sure that what they're spending money on makes sense for them and makes sense for the long term. Which sort of goes hand in hand with like environmentalism and social sustainability. That's a big component for them. Making sure that where they're getting their products from, how they're being used, who they're supporting is environmentally and socially responsible. And so for the first time in a long time, people really care about where they're getting their things. And I think every industry needs to be aware of that for this demographic, because it impacts us all. And they're motivated by something that is truly meaningful. If they feel like they're making a difference or contributing to a cause that will help the greater good, millennials gravitate to those sorts of programs or businesses or strategies to really feel like they're part of something bigger. I think sense of being is right hand in hand with them as well. That's the not so short list of some of the major bullets.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what the millennial demographic, what they really value, and maybe how that might tie into, their decision choices? And I suppose that kind of segues and folds in together with the next question I had with what do they want? So maybe I'll throw that back at you and
For sure. No, values that is that psychographic component, the values behind decision making, and the what and the values, they're sort of hand in hand. A lot of this stuff sort of connects together. But at the end of the day, I'll say what millennials value is smart thinking. And that doesn't just mean smart as it relates to technology, even though that's extremely important and a huge component to smart, right? Which is just tech-focused thinking, smart homes, smart hubs, smartphones, all the smart devices and technology we have. But millennials also, and this is pretty specific to the building industry, but they want a lifestyle and a home that is smart. They do not want to spend time doing things that don't make sense for them. They don't want to put square footage to something that doesn't make sense to put square footage to. They're not sold by the idea that more is better or bigger is better.
What are some of the biggest takeaways and maybe influences on when it comes to finding, purchasing, designing a home about millennials that builders would kind of take the most from?
The first is tying back into what I had said just about the smart home, but in the more literal sense. They want to be well connected. They want to have the latest technology that makes their home life simpler, a high security system that integrates with that as well, just for safety of themselves and their families. Anything to make the home smarter that makes things slightly easier. The integrated Alexas, the automatic lights, the integrated Bluetooth and sound systems, all of that is just part of it. It's almost a baseline expectation, to be honest. It's really something that they just require. And if they don't have it in a home, they'll add it. They'll make sure that they have the measures in place to do that. They want more space. Space is important to them, but the efficiency and the effectiveness of that space is more important than the raw square footage. So, for example, for a millennial, a 30-foot by 40-foot master bedroom is not appealing. It's not. It's considered almost excessive or inappropriate, right? It's so massive. Who hangs out in their master bedroom? Seating grouping in your master? Are you having a party in there? Are you inviting friends to your primary bedroom? It doesn't make so much sense, right? But if you dedicate that same amount of square footage to a public space, or for an indoor-outdoor space, or a specialty unique space like a sunroom, a private office, a flex room, a yoga studio, things like that, those specialty sort of programs within a home, that is absolutely something that millennials will pay more for and are really looking for, in their home. That's speaking more to the single family side. To the multifamily side, if your specific unit can't offer those, the amenities better do it, right? The things that you can't provide or produce in the unit itself, depending on a number of factors, you just need to make sure those are accounted for in the public spaces. And it's a little bit different when you're dealing with public space in a multi-family building, because then you're interacting with other people versus in more of a single family home. You have a pretty designated private area for yourself, being, your lot and your home. But at the end of the day, people, millennials want to entertain. They're very social. They're very connected. They care about their relationships, and they'll find a way to make sure where they're living accommodates for those, and that they can have and host their Friendsgivings, their Christmas parties, their birthday parties. Those social components are very important to them. They're also looking for flexible and mutable spaces that can change easily throughout the day or throughout the year, to offer different things, spaces that are perceived as dead space most of the day are not appealing to millennials. A very relevant example of that right now is the formal study, like your old school mahogany built-ins, the floating desk with the chair. And that is literally perceived as almost wasted space right now, because one, we've all been working from home for some time now, and we found that just sitting in the same spot all day, every day is not conducive to most, especially not millennials. They'll rotate between the dining room, the kitchen island, a stand-up desk attached to their front windows so they can get outside, their backyards, their back decks. So something like a formal study isn't necessarily as appealing, but a study that integrates a lounge component, maybe make it have a small wet bar in there somewhere to have your cocktail after work, make it somewhere that you would read the paper after hours in a dimly lit, more intimate space. That sort of flexibility and mutability is what will drive millennials to buy into those sorts of spaces when they can see how those translate for their kids, right? What if it was a school from home or specialty class at one point, and it translates into their art studio at night in their playroom? Those sorts of things that can flex over time are really appealing for millennials. Can't go without saying that, indoor outdoor space is of the utmost importance. Private outdoor space is very important, but those sorts of indoor spaces that can physically and visually open up to the outdoor are just as important for millennials, and for everyone, arguably, coming out of COVID. Or back into it, I guess, depending on where we are. But that's very important. And the idea that you can actually, it's not just social things that happen outside anymore, but you can actually work from home, you can actually work from outside.
Was there anything else about the white paper and millennials specifically that you figured is important to add, or that home builders should know?
something to remember is that millennials are very okay with change. And so if as a home builder, you're looking to make a change, try a different product type, do something out of the box, know that millennials are the most receptive generation to that right now. And it's the time to do it. They're buying homes, they're making major life shifts, they're moving into second and third tier suburbs. They're moving into urban contexts if they haven't before. They're moving across the country because they can work remotely. Now's the time to take a chance. Now is the time to try something totally different, because I'm telling you, if you don't, millennials will sense it. And if you are not up on the latest and greatest, they will leave you behind. They will make those decisions themselves. And so it is a great opportunity for us as an industry to really shake things up in the home building world and do some really special things and focus on what's important to our buyers, which maybe is not the same as it was 20 or 30 years ago, and probably won't be for the next 20 or 30 years, right? Or probably won't be in 20 or 30 years. So I think now is the time to make some moves and be smart about how you're going about every portion of your process, from sales to selections and how your product type, what your plans are looking like. Be smart about them.